With all this in mind, we may as well consider dragons a real creature, with a credible evolutionary history, compatible with both an old and young Earth perspective. Does it sound like I'm being dogmatic? Well, that's because I am in a way. All the evidence we do have should be enough to establish the existence of dragons, so why hasn't mainstream media just declared them as actual creatures? And why haven't the dinosaurs reemerged after all those millions of years? There are several, but it's tied down to two main reasons. One, we overlook the evidence and rebuild them as dinosaurs and other animals. Two, mainstream science doesn't allow that. Now let me explain. The fact is, most of the time when paleontologists dig up remains of a fossil, they only find pieces, so they don't really know what it is. To figure it out, they match the bones with other animals. Upon seeing which bones match closest, they fill in the gaps with the creature they believe the fossil belonged to. Mind you, they don't find a complete skeleton most of the time, so they don't know with absolute certainty. It's just a guess. They also pick a model that most people can agree upon. This happens all the time in paleontology. Think about the dinosaurs, crocodiles, snakes, or really any animal only known by fragments or incomplete skeletons. The truth is, they don't know if these fragments actually belong to any of these animals, so they result to guessing which animal the bones belong to, either living or more complete skeletons of ancient creatures. This technically means that they can not only rebuild the creature any way they want, but allow all sorts of possibilities in design for it. And for the second question, it's simple. They don't allow it. It goes against their rules. Despite the scientific plausibility of these ideas, they can't allow all ideas to go public. How do I know this? Through observation. The majority need to pick a model that everyone can agree on to reduce controversy. And of course, we have the KT boundary. You could argue that we genuinely don't find dinosaurs past the KT boundary. However, I haven't seen any documents of them actually rock dating this said boundary. I also have more questions about their claim. What mineral rating did they use? How many times did they use it? At least 5 times? Did they change the mineral readings? There are different areas for this KT boundary around the world. Did they also examine each boundary to see what the reading suggests? Did they do it at least 5 times for each boundary with different mineral readings? Are they hiding readings that they don't want us to see? What are the readings below and above this boundary? And what is the reading of the boundary itself? Do they go to the same rock boundaries or fossil sites to record the rock readings and see if it's changed every 5 to 10 years due to any radiation exposure from the sun or space? Now, mainstream science does admit that they do use radiometric dating when getting these dates, but they never specify as to what types of mineral readings that they use. There are many different radiometric measurements to use when it comes to rock dating, so which did they use when it comes to arriving these dates? If they haven't done any of those following questions, they're hiding something. There's no reason to believe that. You're making baseless claims. See what I mean? This is already a red flag. It's only 7 simple questions about how they know the KT boundary is what they say it is. Speaking of which, I'm gonna go there. Radiometric dating. What if I told you that they use those dates as a foundation because they really have no idea for how old rocks or fossils actually are? Is that out of the question? I mean, just think. Without radiometric readings, they cannot be sure for how old something is. So this conclusion is not unreasonable. Millions of years. You know, slow gradual climate change does not make fossils. And thankfully more people are waking up to this. But mainstream science still uses it as if it's absolute truth. No, an organism needs to be buried rapidly in sediment right after it dies, underwater, and you need a lot of pressure, which doesn't need to take that long at all. In fact, it doesn't even need to take hundreds of years. Now, while I do side more with the young Earth worldview, with the global flood, I'm not showing favoritism. I've looked at the arguments of both parties equally, and making my own conclusions based on the knowledge about the world around me. And I truly believe a young Earth worldview explains these mysteries in geology better, and a biblical perspective explains the world we live in better. You think the Bible is just some book, or that religion is just the figment of a powerful imagination. Half-assed conclusion at best. It's like throwing away an important piece of a puzzle and still trying to figure it out yourself. What we see in fiction is just a diluted version of the real thing. Truth is stranger than fiction. It's not just the Bible, it's everything in mythology and folklore. It testifies to a recent creation, a garden, an Adam and Eve figure, a downfall, a global flood, spirits, demigods, dragons, giants, and an apocalyptic event said to come in the near future. Yes, it does have different elements and characteristics, but it all has a similar layout. We haven't even mentioned the people who still have supernatural experiences to this day, and almost every culture acknowledges a supreme being. How is any of this a coincidence? I'll tell you how. It's a coincidence either to those who aren't paying attention or to those who try to explain it with the naturalistic perspective. But going back to rock dating, the way the young Earth worldview suggests, and no kidding, you can't just pick one reading and ignore other mineral readings for the same object. That's favoritism. To say something like a coal or fossil is carbon-free demands that you test it. And I mean actually test it, without cheating. Go to a deep mine and look for something like a fossil or coal or diamond. When you find it, carefully transport it to the lab and radiocarbon date it. Invite the public to visit so that they can see what you're doing. You know, this will definitely help with reducing the conspiracy theories surrounding mainstream science. But no, they don't do this, because it goes against their rules. You mean to tell me that they don't do it merely because they don't want to break their rule, even if it means discovering the truth? Are they seriously going to lie just to keep their job? Well, let's see. If there's any carbon-14 in something said to be millions of years old, it's not millions of years old, regardless of what other readings say. There's no beating around the bush. So yes, they are willing to lie as long as it means not breaking their own rules and traditions in geology. Yes, I am aware of the decay that happens upon reaching 20,000 years, and yet we trust dates on artifacts that are said to be over 20,000 years old, and carbon-14 completely disappears by 60,000 years. So, how are the rocks and fossils any different? By now you're probably resulting to one of your favorite choice of words. Baseless my ass. I can almost guarantee you that they result to the word baseless claim because they don't have the balls to straight up say untrue. Well, why don't they prove that they are telling the truth? If they really wanted us to know that they don't lie and cheat and that we're all just making baseless claims, they should have the balls to disclose all the data and information they have, including what they don't show. Bring a line detective setup so that we as the public can know with absolute certainty. But they don't. They just use the same tactics. And people buy into it. It's unbelievable. Another huge red flag. You know, if they wanted to declare that dinosaurs did survive the KT extinction and lived up to present time, they can. All they have to do is look for carbon-14 or use other mineral readings and update their geologic history. Or use the same mineral readings that they are accustomed to and date each sample at least 20 times to see if they get the same reading. This is ultimately why I don't even bother with radiometric measurements. The scientific community picks readings, not prove that any of them are more accurate. This also applies to things like ice cores and tree rings. It's merely data interpreted as evidence. No scientist with conditions will ever entertain that. I get it. It's too simple, bizarre, and straight up radical to be the truth, and it doesn't satisfy your unquenchable hunger for knowledge, so it must be false. Oh, on credentials? Do those things really mean anything if they go against the truth to get it? No one can really say that we have no evidence to support the existence of dinosaurs coexisting with humans, as the opposite is true. Artwork, eyewitness accounts, artifacts, and sculptures of what we would call dragons and neo-dinosaurs, but also more convincing evidence such as soft tissue, skin feather impressions, blood cells, carbon-14, and even more importantly, fossils. And if anyone says that doesn't count, they are lying to you. It does count. Yes, I am aware of the hoaxes, like the Ica stones, but it's lazy and dishonest to use them as an excuse to dismiss all the evidence. That's cherry picking and you all know it. And no, I'm not picking sides. Creationists and non-creationists cherry pick data, and I just explained to you how non-creationist scientists pick and choose mineral ratings. You can't blame one party and then act like the other isn't guilty of doing the same thing. Did you know that naturalism has been around since ancient times? Yes, modern scientists today follow their example, and most of the scientists today follow the forefathers of naturalism. The purpose of naturalism is to offer a worldview without any spiritual elements. Let's be clear, naturalism doesn't disprove the supernatural. It offers an alternative explanation for how we see the world, which involves explaining the supernatural naturally. We rely way too much on the scientific method when it comes to confirming if something is real, especially when it comes to what is supernatural. I get it. Only what is compatible with the scientific method exists. But this is the problem with using natural sciences for something that isn't natural. You have to use logic and reasoning without using the scientific method. It's simple. Anyone can do it. Yet some act like it's a complex problem that they can't solve. The only reason why no one takes mythology seriously is because this completely overthrows the worldview that is already held by the world as dogmatic fact. It's not the Big Bang, it's not evolution, it's naturalism. You know, the term the greatest deception Satan made is convincing the world he doesn't exist. We all live in a very agnostic society, if that makes sense. And it's naturalism that says that the supernatural is nothing more than just the figments of the people's powerful imagination. If numbers, eyewitnesses, authentic footage, documentary, or even a personal encounter yourself isn't enough, then there has to be a personal reason why no matter what's presented, they refuse it. And I really think a larger portion about all of this is how we define truth. What is truth? Is it objective or subjective? If I said there were two variations of truth, is that out of the question? I mean, think. You have data that can be tested through a microscope, and you have these experiences and beings that are real but are non-physical. What if I said that naturalistic truth is everything that is understood from a naturalism perspective, and spiritual truth is everything understood from a perspective that came before the natural realm? And if the spiritual realm came first, then it should be noted that the spiritual truth is where absolute truth resides, not naturalism.
It's unfortunate that science has to keep fighting these battles, but because the painting continues to be used and promote non-scientific views of the world, it became necessary to demonstrate with complete clarity that those ideas are just wrong.
Says who? I would like to know this. Why are those ideas wrong? What authority do you have to dogmatically decide what is or isn't scientific or real? I'll tell you why, and that is this. Because it goes against mainstream scientific opinions. It's completely countercultural. And if what we read about in mythology and folklore is true, it means they are wrong. They would have to rewrite everything. They would have to change their rules. They would have to disclose theories they treat as dogmatic fact. They would have to admit that their view of geology is based on the present, not a document of what actually happened in the past. Even more critically, they would need to change their minds on the origin of mankind and the universe. Maybe this is the largest conflict between mythology and natural science. Mythology tells a different origin story than natural science does. Wait, isn't science about how the world works? So aren't we really just using science to build an origin story apart from what we read about in ancient texts such as the Bible? Seriously, folks, science can't speak for itself, so we can stop with the science says mentality. For the last time, science does not prove anything. It explains how it works. It's people. People and their own interpretations and self-righteous beliefs. Read your dictionaries. The word science comes from the Latin word scientia, which means knowledge. Put that in a simple sentence and see what you get. So yes, It is scientific to involve supernatural explanations with or without natural sciences. Anyone who says otherwise is lying. I mean, what you're saying isn't new. Only what you can put under a microscope is reality. Man rising from apes is just a theory backed up by data and findings that they interpret as evidence. Take a look around you. More and more people are exploring the ancient world, and some can even be verified through natural science. Maybe at some point, the mainstream scientific community will join along and start to think outside of this box they created for themselves. But they never will. You know, I don't just blame the scientists themselves. I blame the government, because it's the government that allows which ideas can be public or not, and there is a lot of findings that are covered up. Fortunately, more people are waking up to this. That's why you're going to see an increase in theories and ideas surrounding the Bible, Christianity, giants, dragons, cryptozoology, the afterlife, etc. Someday, this oppression of knowledge will come to an end. You know, forget about dinosaurs. Dragons are far more terrifying. Even the mighty T-Rex stands no chance against a full-grown Western dragon. And they say, "Oh, I love how when dinosaurs are portrayed as animals and not mindless death machines like in the media such as Jurassic Park." And where do you think this mindless death machine idea came from? It didn't come from a man-made theory. It came from mythology, from dragons. And yes, they're still animals in as much as cats and dogs are. It should be noted that not all dragons in mythology were portrayed as death machines anyway. We treat dinosaurs like mammals and birds, while dragons and neo-dinosaurs act a lot more like reptiles. The half-assed fossil theory for dragons is better than just dismissing them entirely, but it does not hold up as well as ancient people seeing dragons alive. Where's the evidence to prove that they saw fossils and not living creatures? Take a look at some of their writings. Does it sound like they're documenting fossil findings to you? No, not even close. When it comes to the mainstream scientific community, just be careful. We as the public need to make a better effort in testing the honesty and transparency of mainstream science and keep an unbiased view when it comes to looking at creationists and non-creationists. As for those two, they need to sit down. When it comes to these conspiracies surrounding mainstream science, do not just blindly dismiss them. They might not be far off from the truth. If people like you and me can't even question or challenge mainstream media, then we're all guilty of being biased followers who don't even know what we're standing for. That's really why I don't listen to mainstream media anymore. It's all for public consumption. It's only a matter of time when the truth will finally come to life, and no one will question whenever if it's just a story. And in the end, these madmen that run our governments, and the people we call paleontologists and geologists, etc., will fall with the lies they created. These people only care about their jobs, not the truth, and it's gonna bite them in the ass someday. It doesn't matter how many lies or theories they put out, and it doesn't matter how many people believe it. The truth will always be the truth, and a lie will always be a lie.